Welcome back to another edition of the Knight Report podcast. I'm your host, Mike Broadbent. Joining me once again is my co-host, Richie O'Leary, and Rutgers beat reporter, Alec Krauthamel. We're going to talk a little bit more post-mortem from the Wisconsin game. We'll talk about what Greg had to say at his presser today ahead of the UCLA matchup. Talk about a decommitment from the football program, and in some upbeat news, the Rutgers basketball team has been ranked 25th in the AP poll, the preseason AP poll. So we'll talk about that ahead of the scrimmage on Thursday. But first, this podcast is once again presented to you by Knight and Day Apparel. Get ready for football and tailgating season with Knight and Day Apparel. Our apparel is designed to keep you comfortable and stylish from the pregame excitement to the final whistle. Whether you're grilling in the parking lot or cheering from the stands, our high-quality gear has you covered with unbeatable comfort and team spirit. Use our promo code RutgersRivals to get 10% off your purchase. Score big this season and keep shopping with Knight and Day Apparel.
New T-shirt finally came out. Chop Life. I think it's pretty solid.
Ooh, nice.
I had to include the exclamation point because Rutgers apparently trademarked it. So, yeah. But other than that, I think it's pretty cool shirt. A little different, but yeah.
This podcast is also presented to you by Bet Online. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one resource for everything football. It has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during games. If you think you know your stuff, get in on our $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread each week for your chance at $200,000 worth of prizes. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our 150 slot games. Head to the website today and get in on the action. Bet Online, the game starts here. All right, so we've all had the weekend to think about this game. I can't help but think that this is kind of like a mask slipping moment for this program. A couple reasons why I kind of think that. One is I just think like winning the way that Schiano wants to play, especially offensively, has so narrow of margins for success. Like you need to be perfect basically to play the way that they want to play. And anytime you're not, we've fallen into big holes. And, against Nebraska, we gritted our teeth and found a way to fight through it. But if you don't have that kind of overly enthusiastic level of effort on both sides of the ball, you're not going to win. And you saw that. You saw what the level of effort could do on Nebraska's in the game against Nebraska, where it kept you alive, but the offense still couldn't necessarily get it done. And then you saw on Saturday what happens when you don't have that fight and you don't have that level of effort, where you just totally collapse in on yourself and can't do anything. So I think last season we played with a lot of that fight most of the year because it was needed. This year we kind of saw that the offense could do some things, and the offense hasn't kept that up. So the defense has suffered as well. I also think it's incredibly disheartening that we're in year 5 of a developmental program, and we just haven't developed enough players. There are not enough guys in this team that are able to play in competitive games. And you saw that on Saturday. We dealt with a ton of injuries this year. Last year, we were immaculately healthy. We lost Tyreen Powell late in the season to that wrist injury, but otherwise, we were fairly healthy all season. This year has been the yin to that yang, where we've lost a ton of guys. But that happens every season to somebody. Wisconsin was just as banged up as we were. They're in year 2 of their program under Fickle. But they had guys come in and be serviceable in roles that, the guys who came in for Rutgers were not serviceable. I also think Schiano talked, the first thing he said in his presser last week was Nebraska's not going to beat us twice. We're going to make sure that we're ready for the game. And we couldn't have come out less ready on Saturday against Wisconsin. So the messaging is just not piercing through with this team as it has in past years with Schiano. I couldn't tell you what it is. I'm not in the room. I'm not, on the team, obviously. So I don't know if that's the case or not. But from the outside looking in, it just felt like this team has kind of had its heart cut out. Now let's see if we can bounce back. But as of right now, we were the first to, ring the alarm about things we saw that were concerning even in wins against Virginia Tech, against Washington, and in even the games against Howard and Akron. Like there were a lot of things that were concerning, even though we were blowing those teams out. And those have only been magnified as the competition has gotten harder, as the season has trudged on. Everybody's nicked up at this point. some even worse than nicked up. And Schiano alluded to maybe some more guys being longer term injuries coming out of the game from Saturday. But I'm just personally, I'm pretty defeated right now as a fan. Sure, we could go out and win against UCLA Saturday and be 5-2 and kind of be in line with where a lot of us were hoping we'd be. But that doesn't necessarily mean that things are rosy in terms of an outlook. And I'll kind of hand this off to you guys now. What are your, and Alec, we'll start with you. What are your just general feelings on this team after the performances you've seen as a whole this season?
I mean, yeah, you kind of said it. There have been some concerning signs even in the blowout wins. I mean, got off to a little bit of a slow start against both Howard and Akron, and then they got it going, thankfully. And then it was the complete opposite against Washington and Virginia Tech, where they start out extremely hot and then just kind of hold on for dear life as that game goes on. And both those things kind of reared their ugly heads against Wisconsin, where Schiano has said multiple times, he said it after the game on Saturday, and he said it today, that was unacceptable performance. They just weren't ready to come out and play. And I think you said it, you hit it right on the head, where, Schiano said last week, I promise you, if Rutgers loses this game, it's not going to be because we let Nebraska beat us twice, but it just looked like the same issues kept popping up. Now, of course, the injuries were there. There's probably going to be more injuries. Schiano hinted I believe his exact words were, we've been banged up. We lost a couple more. I would be shocked if Sam Brown comes back this year. Aaron Lewis only played, I believe, 5 snaps on Saturday. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just not where you want to be injury-wise, but such is life in the Big Ten, and they really have to get back up off the mat and find a way to get that physicality and toughness and edge that we always attribute to this Rutgers team back on the field, because it just didn't look like they had it. More tangible stuff. I mean, we talked about it to death in the postgame show, but the offense just looks kind of stale. It's like they don't really know what they want their identity to be. They know what they want their identity to be, but they're just not doing it. And I mean, they need some real fixing. I guess we'll see if Kenny Fletcher comes back. He left in the second quarter, I believe, and then he didn't come back. Victor Konopka and Mike Higgins went the rest of the way. That's another weapon down. We'll see if Ian Strong's healthy. He looked not great health-wise the last couple weeks. It's just they have to find a way. And it looked like Wisconsin, they couldn't find a way early, and then from that point on, it was off to the races. So they have to find a way to beat UCLA. And I know the spread's out. They're a touchdown favorite at home, which is good, but they have to find a way to look convincing in doing so. They can't squeak away with like a 3-point victory against UCLA, where we're seeing a lot of the same problems. The run game has struggled. The run defense is one thing that I'm really looking for against UCLA, because UCLA's run offense is absolutely terrible. I think as a team, UCLA has less rushing yards than like 10 individual running backs, so that has to improve. I don't know what we're going to see in the secondary either. I mean, Bo Masco and Al-Shadi Salam did a lot of work on the outside with Robert Longbream out and Eric Rogers a bit banged up. So we have to see improvement. It can't just be the same performance, but because it's a worse team, Rutgers still wins. We have to see an improved performance from this past week.
Yeah, I think you guys kind of all said everything. I think there's so many issues among the offense specifically, not just injuries. Of course, injuries are going to play a factor because Brian Felter's out, the line falls apart. Kenny Fletcher, I'd be a little shocked if he comes back this week, just because he looked like he was either grabbing his wrist or arm on the way out on that one play where he ended up dropping it, but it looks like the helmet just hit him right in the hand or arm. So we'll see how bad that one is. But offensive line's just been – it's rough. And I know Brian Felter was great, and that left side of the line was great when you had Felter and Holland Pearson. And Zlinskis was also pretty solid when you have those two next to you. But that right side, we've said it, like you said before, Mike, Washington, Virginia Tech, that right side of the line was still an issue. Now you combine those two with a left guard issue, and now you have a multitude of issues on that protection front. It's just not developing guys, too. 2022, I know we said it on the post game. Nelson Monegro, Joe DeCroshy, Jacob Allen, 3 of those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 linemen. 3 of those 7 linemen medically retired. Taj White is playing, but he's played tackle his entire career at Rutgers. All of a sudden, now you're going to put him at guard. I don't think that's always the best move in the world. Is he the best what they have? I guess, because otherwise you would think they'd go try someone else. But even Kobe Asamoah hasn't really been great. He hasn't really been that stout run blocker that we thought he could be. Amir Stinetti is nowhere to be seen. Dante Chin got 2 snaps in that one game and then never came back. Instead, they're putting Terrence Salami, who might be the better option, I guess. You would just assume so. I'm not going to say I'm an offensive line guru or anything, but to put a preferred walk-on out there as your next best guard tells you that you're not developing guys, on top of the fact that you still have another guy, Nick Oliveri, who played a couple snaps towards the end in garbage time. That was Nick's 6 snaps against with like a Johnny Shepard at quarterback, and Antoine Raymond was in. But I guess he's not ready either. So you get the 6 or the 7 linemen from 2022 combined with actually that class was technically what 11 or no, I'm sorry, 9 linemen, because they brought in the 2 transfers and 3 transfers, and Curtis Dunlap, Willie Tyler, who would have been nice to have this year, but and JD DiRenzo. But it's got the point where you either have to hit the portal every year for a lineman, multiple linemen, and make sure they're good, because you hit the portal this offseason and Shedrick Rhodes is nowhere to be found. And you also have to develop these guys. It's all about development. I know Flats has only taken over 2 years ago, but even those guys, like they're not ready. You need someone that can step up.
Yeah, I think that's why it's so just difficult to kind of like swallow the coach speak, not the coach speak, but like if you're pointing in the direction as a program where we're gonna go heavy into high school ranks, we're gonna develop guys, we're gonna instill this toughness in the chop of the program. Like when we'll talk more about what actually Schiano said during the presser, but one of the things that stood out for me is he said it's been like a tough 45 hours from the game. Like I guess he's been like being very specific about the amount of time since the game ended, but he said in watching the tape he didn't see anything major that was a concern to him. It was just a lot of small things. And if your entire culture is chop the moment, to chop your job, to stay focused, and you just see a litany of small things, a litany of little mistakes, your program is not resonating with this team. Your messaging, Schiano, is not registering with your players. That is on you. If you cannot get these guys to buy in to your entire mantra of chopping and being focused on just your job, that's on you. Now, there's a lot of stuff that feels stale with this program, philosophy-wise, offensively, defensively. Like, historically, Schiano doesn't allow a ton of big plays. This year, I think Brian Fonseca said at the presser, it was like 17 big plays, so 17 plays of 30-plus yards allowed by this team so far. Just like so much, it just feels like stuff's like crumbling. Like the stuff that Schiano is like so known for is not working right now. And maybe Schiano needs to go on like his own like ayahuasca journey this offseason to figure out like what he needs to kind of do as a coach in 2024. But like so much of like what he wants to accomplish is so antiquated and so just not fitting into not only the conference he's in, but like the players he can have access to, because portal guys we know are more expensive than high schoolers, and I think that's the primary motivator for going deeper into the high school ranks. So if you can't develop players and you can't afford transfers, you need to kind of like figure out, is my philosophy going to work, or do I need to really change my philosophy? So I don't know. That's kind of all I got on this. Do you guys have any more stuff for this weekend or how the season's going before we get into what was said at the presser?
Well, what would you say like an average hit rate is on a recruiting class? Like 50%?
40%.
40%?
If you're talking about like useful depth,
yeah,
40 to 50%. Yeah.
Like you look through the 2021, 2022, 2023 classes, and you can give 2023 a pass, I guess, because it's only year 2 for them. So you might be able to give those guys a pass. But 2021, 22, there's like transfer, kicked off team, transfer, not even on too deep. Medical retire. Like it's just a lot of misses in these 2 classes. And that's you're starting to see the effect of it now with the depth. These guys go down, these second stringers come in. I mean, I said on Saturday too, Kenny Fletcher was a defensive end for half of his career at Rutgers, and now he's the tight end 1 automatically, by the way. Like, there wasn't even another tight end competing, basically. Like, Konopka's up there, but never healthy either. Who else? Wide receivers. Like, the wide receiver room's just been add a transfer every year. It's defensive tackle, add a transfer every year.
Yeah. It's the wide receiver thing's incredibly frustrating, because the only time that they have guys who aren't these like mountain men, like 6'4", bigger, big targets, or guys that walk on, like a Christian Dremel, or guys who transfer in like a Damier Miller. Like they don't really like develop guys who are smaller. And if you look at the NFL, they're not, the Calvin Johnson mold isn't necessarily, the wide receiver one mold anymore. The majority of the top receivers in the NFL are like 6'1". It's guys who are good route runners. It's guys who can create separation. Like you look at, for every, let's say, I'll say AJ Brown, who's not even like that big of a guy, like height wise, but he's just like so much more dominant physically than everyone else. There's like how many Justin Jeffersons or Malik Neighbors, like the modern prototype for a wide receiver isn't 6'4", 220 pounds anymore. It's 6'1", is quicker than fast, and knows how to, create separation through body movement. And so the, guys like KJ Duff and Ian Strong have shown a lot of promise, but they don't target guys who are just good receivers if they don't have those physical, measurements. Like Christian Dremel not playing at all this year until this past week is so befuddling to me, because you're telling me that like we can't get any production out of our receivers. You see how many times Chris Long drops balls. You see how many times, we just can't do anything in the passing game. And you have a guy who performed pretty well last year when given the opportunity. Look what happens the first time he gets thrown a ball this year. It's like a 50-yard catch down the sideline. Like not playing Christian Dremel, I feel like is borderline malpractice. Like I get maybe you don't start the season with him because you think other guys are better, but like the guy's been productive. Like what's going? I don't know.
And Damir's played the outside at Monmouth. Like it's not like it's unheard of. But looking at these classes, 2021, Braden Fox, Max Patterson, Carnell Davis, transfer. 2022, it was Amarion Brown, never made it. Fitzroy Legister playing DB, Rashad Rochelle, transfer. 2023, you got Ian Strong, that's a hit, but technically because you had him at safety to start. Sage Claudius, DB, Dylan Braithwaite, nowhere to be found. Jesse O'Fury, DB, DeAndre Johnson, nowhere to be found. Boy Nakun Jr., DB, and Fama Toure, who's just a little bit down the depth chart. Like they're just miss after miss after miss after miss. It's like, if you have a guy like Christian Dremel who's reliable and can catch the ball in traffic, which we've seen over the past year, maybe not this season, but last season, take Chris Long out and throw Damier Miller out there. Or do what Alex said. Start running 4 wide receiver sets, because Kenny Fletcher and Victor Konopka have just whiffing on blocks this week. So at that point, it's just useless to have a guy out there. Put a guy that can catch the ball out there.
It's not like Dremel's a bad blocker either, especially when you put him in space. Now, I'm not saying put him in line with the offensive line. But we've seen on screen passes when they have him on the field, he's a good blocker, especially for his size. And we were talking about some of these past recruiting classes. Go back to the offensive line as well. Like 2021, that's supposed to be the year that these offensive linemen truly break out, year 3, year 4. Yeah. We got Zach Taylor, who was listed as offensive lineman, but technically came in as a long snapper. I don't think he really played at all. Kevin Toth, who transferred to Kent State, he's there now. Gus Linskus and Tyler Needham, who are hits and starters, but that's it. That's all you got for offensive line.
Needham as a hit at this point. Like he's struggling.
He's a starter, so I guess you can count it.
By definition, he's a hit. Yeah,
that's fair.
But yeah, I mean that's all you got out of this is the 2021 class, and then next year will be 2022. Those year 3-ish guys are supposed to be the ones that are truly breaking out and becoming those big contributors in the development. I mean, looking at the rest of this class. I mean, you talked about wide receiver. Sean Munnerlin transfer. Al-Shadi Salam was actually solid at running back. Now he's DB. I guess he's still kind of learning that position. Keontae Hamilton, that's a hit because he's a starter. I think you already mentioned Kerry Benton, no longer on the team. Austin Dean, I don't know if he's still here either. Zaire Angoy, he's on the 2 deep. Cameron Stewart transfer. Sean Griffin, still on the 2 deep. Henry Hughes, I believe he transferred. No, he's still on the team.
Still there.
Yeah, Hughes is still here. Austin Dean is on Georgia Tech.
Yeah. Ryan Keeler, unfortunately, passed away. Rest in peace. He was at UNLV. Elijah Clark, I think he's at, Syracuse now?
Syracuse starter.
Shaquan Loyal, that's a hit. Jordan Thompson, he's on the 2 deep, and Desmond Nigunuson, that's another hit. So, yeah, that's this is supposed to be the year that those guys, like Schiano's always said, the pipeline, when other guys go out, these guys are supposed to fill their place. And I guess we'll see, because next year it'll be 2022 and 2023. Those guys are supposed to make their breakouts, but it does not look like this 2021 class has done that just yet.
I don't want to say it's just on the receivers and all that too either. Like QB, like Ethan's got to be better. He's throwing behind people on multiple plays. He's not getting protection, and I get that, but I know he's the best they have currently. But he's got to step it up a little more. You got to make accurate on-platform throws.
I feel like the first half just really broke him in going into the second half. Like he was taking a lot of pressure. They dropped. I mean, the charting for these drops, I don't know how they count a drop or not. I counted like 6 drops in the first half alone. Yeah. So, like, when you guys can't catch the ball and you have guys going down left and right, yeah, I'm going to be a little skittish by the time the third, fourth quarter rolls around too. So I don't know. I don't put this loss on Ethan by any means.
No.
He didn't have a great game, but like it wasn't because he threw 3 picks or because he couldn't complete a pass. Like I put this more on the pass catchers than Ethan.
Well, that, and like you said before, the unimaginative offense. If it's not going in a straight line like it's going to plan, it's just all the wheels fall off. So, whatever. Delay of game, substitution issues. We can keep harping on everything.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about what Schiano said at the presser. He opened once again by saying it was unacceptable. He takes responsibility. The guys weren't ready. And then he said, like, I'll take a few questions on last week before we move on to this week. Alec, you were there. What were some of the things that stood out to you about what maybe just the tone of Schiano, some things you see there in person that aren't necessarily picked up on the actual recording? So just generally, what were some of the things that he said that surprised you and maybe just the vibe of the room in general?
Yeah, it definitely wasn't obviously it wasn't as upbeat as last week where it was like, you barely lose to Nebraska. Obviously, the mood's a little bit down, but he's like, it's still on an upward trajectory. He declined to say anything on injuries. He actually got ahead of it and said, we got down a couple guys, lost a couple more in his opening statement. And then he was asked further about it because usually his policy is if it's season ending, then I'll tell you. Otherwise, it's on the availability report. He declined to say anything on that in that regard. He was asked about the season-ending ones and any of the guys that was injured going into the game or got injured during the game. He said they're still evaluating. The one that stood out to me, obviously, Sam Brown. I mean, that was a pretty rough injury that he suffered. I would be surprised. This is just my opinion. If he plays again this season, I'm sure a lot of people echo that opinion too. Yeah, we don't really know. It seemed like he was definitely a little bit more downtrodden, obviously, when you lose by 35 versus losing by 7. You're just talking about getting back to the basics and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I guess trying to move on to this week. He said he did say that UCLA is a very tough team. They started to find themselves as the season's gone on. To Mike's theory, once again, he didn't actually name any players. So if you go off of that theory, Rutgers is going to win by 40 this week. But he said they are very big in the trenches on both sides, really. They got some tough linebackers and a really big defensive line group. So that's mostly what he's looking out for this weekend against UCLA.
So I know he's deferred once again to the availability report, despite the fact that he's said in the past, if anybody's lost for the season, we will let you know. Otherwise, we'll defer to the availability report. Didn't he say something along the lines of like, we're banged up and we lost a couple more this week in reference to injuries?
Yeah, and I don't know if he meant at least I don't think he meant for the season. Otherwise, I don't know if he would have told us or not or what. I have no idea at this point. I don't know if he meant we lost a couple more during the game, just the guys that got injured like Flip Dix and Aaron Lewis, or if he meant those guys are going to be out for a few weeks. It's impossible to tell. Yep. I couldn't really tell what happened with Aaron Lewis. It looked like he was in some pain. He ended up going back to the locker room before coming back out onto the field. Flip Dixon, I think he got banged up a couple times too. Like I said,
first one was cramping.
Yeah, and then the second one looked a little bit more serious, I guess. So I guess we'll have to wait and see. That's kind of the frustrating part. We just don't know. Yeah. It didn't seem like when Mohamed Toure was announced he was out for the year. You could clearly tell it had taken a toll on him to learn that and announce that to everyone. It didn't seem like that same kind of, I guess, vibe from him. So, which I guess is a positive, but again, we're not going to know until 10 a.m. on Saturday, so I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Rich, was there anything that stood out to you that he said watching the playback of the presser?
No, just after rewatching it, I do think guys are going to be out for the season. Like I know Sam Brown, if it is a dislocated knee, I can speak from experience. It's like if most of the time you're tearing something with that. So knock on wood, hopefully it's not a tear for him. But even if it is just a dislocated knee, it's still going to be like 6-8 weeks, something like that, just to get back to fully flexible and everything. And at that point, the season's practically over. I would probably just rest him for the rest of the year. Kenny Fletcher, I don't know how serious that one was, but like I said before, he didn't come back into the game. It looks like the helmet went right into his wrist arm area. I think they're going to be banged up really bad this week, unfortunately. I think the fact that he's kind of not answering the question if guys are out for the year tells me guys are out for the year.
Yeah.
And you'll probably find out Saturday afternoon, 10 o'clock, as per usual. But
more like 10:05. They're always a little late.
Yeah,
they're kind of refreshing all the time.
Yeah. But apparently you can lie on that report. I don't know if you saw it because UCLA did this past week. So
I don't know what the punishment's going to be for that because I don't think it's ever happened before.
No, you have to do something. Otherwise, everyone's just going
to. I think it's going to be a fine. They're not going to dock them a game or something like that. But
if it's a cheap fine, don't tell competitive advantage over here that because then they'll get like 100 people questionable.
Yeah, imagine it's only like a $2,000 fine. Schiano would do that every week.
2024 roster questionable. Yeah. There you go. Yep. See you next week.
So we'll have a full preview of the UCLA game this upcoming week at some point. UCLA moved to 1-5 on the season. They had a close game with Minnesota at home, but they ended up losing late. Some really weird games in general in conference this week. Illinois went to overtime against Purdue. Maryland got blown out by Northwestern at home on Friday night by 27. Just like a lot of really weird results. So there's still some possibilities for wins on the schedule. I don't want to sound overly doom and gloom, but like you just need to see a bounce back. If we see the team, play inspired and show that, these guys who are filling in for injured players can perform in like the same stratosphere as the starters, that'll reinvigorate me. But for right now, like I'm pretty beat down from this team. Another guy who seemed to be maybe not beat down by this team, but wanted out, Jakarrion Kenan. He decommitted from the 2025 class this weekend. This feels a little bit more like the staff told him to go kick rocks because of something that happened. Rich, what's the story behind this decommitment?
So I think we actually broke the news on Thursday, something like that. Jakarrion Kenan was scheduled to visit North Carolina State. Spoke with the staff. The visit was off. He told them he's not going and then visited anyway. Greg Schiano has a strict policy for his commitments that you cannot visit elsewhere. It's like basically saying, I have a girlfriend, but I'm still going on dates, as people like to compare it to. So that's not allowed. Within the day and open his recruitment. Now, interesting thing here is North Carolina State doesn't have a scholarship for him. So that's going to be a tough one for him. But he did get Campbell. So as Alec referenced in our group chat, we now have Rutgers has now traded Jakarrion Kenan for the commitment of Peyton Bonds, I believe it was, for baseball. So I guess that counts technically. That's if he goes to Campbell. But I expect him to probably end up at like a G5 when it's all said and done. He's had a rough senior year so far, transferring down to Marlborough County to follow his coaching staff, who was in North Carolina, now South Carolina. But I don't think they're going to replace him in this class just because there's still 28. I think it's 28 commitments as well. Still have a lot of good DBs there in this class. And if anything, you now have a ship for the portal and you go portal shopping. And the one spot they've done pretty well portal shopping has been cornerback. So see what happens there.
Yeah, DBs in general, they've had a lot of success in the portal. Flip Dixon as well. There's one other guy that came to mind, but
Eric Rogers has been pretty solid.
Eric Rogers. Christian Braswell developed pretty well.
Braswell, yes, that's the one. Trey Avery. Yeah,
they've
crushed it.
The only one that really didn't, I guess, was Patrice Rene, right? But he's been injured, not injured.
Yep.
So. Yeah, I mean, I think they're still set at defensive back for this class. I mean, you got Stretch Dorillis, you got Michael Clayton, you got Tariq Harris, more of a safety, and Caleb Singleton. Stephen Murray's more of a receiver, am I right?
I think he's a linebacker.
No, he
tore his ACL too, I think.
That's Tuibi Kaba.
No, Stephen Murray did too. The North Carolina kid.
That was Isaiah Deloach.
That's Isaiah Deloach, you're right.
Yeah. Yep. Stephen Murray, receiver first, but could play DB.
Yeah, so I think they're still pretty set there.
Yeah.
All right, let's turn to some good news. The AP poll was released today for college basketball, and Rutgers, they were not cowards because they ranked Rutgers. Rutgers came in at 25th overall. ESPN's preseason poll also had them at 25th overall. I think this is just a team that nobody really kind of knew what to expect, but they knew that they're probably going to be pretty good. So might as well just I think a lot of people probably threw the token 23rd, 24th, 25th number at them because let's face it, preseason polls are just so flawed, and they're almost over half these teams aren't going to be ranked by the end of the season. So take it with a huge grain of salt, but it is showing a general level of respect for this team. First time you can get a chance to look at this team in a competitive environment is this Thursday, the 17th of October, 6:30. Still tickets available. Rutgers St. John's for a charity scrimmage. All the money raised will be going to, I think, the Jimmy V Foundation. So a great cause, and really the only chance you're going to have for a cheap ticket inside the rack this year for a men's basketball game. Any reactions by either of you guys about the ranking for Rutgers in the first AP poll?
Yeah. You can go first, Richie.
You go. Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
I believe it's either the third or fourth time they've been ranked preseason. I thought it was the third, but officially announced by the program as the fourth. So they're probably right. The other one being the COVID season when they were ranked 24th, and then also I believe 1977 was the last one. I think Mike. I think you said it right. It's just kind of see where nobody knows where to rank half these teams. I want to shout out the one guy who ranked High Point 25th and the other guy who ranked Arkansas Pine Bluff 23rd. I think we need, because the preseason polls are you just never know what you're going to get from them. We need more we need more homer voting in the preseason poll. But anyways, 1976. So right after they made the Final Four, they were ranked 17th in the preseason poll. Then they dropped out 2 weeks later. But anyways, I mean, it's tough. We could talk about this too, but the KenPom preseason ratings also came out last night, and Rutgers was ranked 63rd nationally and 15th or 16th in the Big Ten. 15 Big Ten teams were in the top 60, which is absolutely wild.
That's another great point. Those two came out
a lot. It's a lot of unknown.
32 voters had Rutgers ranked. So, I mean, the highest was Victor Flores shout out to him, from Montana for having them number 16 overall. But yeah, I mean, there's some notable names that voted them in the top 25, like Seth Davis, Jeff Brazzello. Dickie V actually didn't have him ranked, interestingly enough. Rothstein didn't have him ranked, who saw practice too, which plays a factor, I guess. Looking, I mean, nothing too crazy, I didn't think, but just some interesting rankings in general.
Friend of the program, Danny Breslauer, tweeted this out today. Bart Torvik has Rutgers ranked 19th in their rankings. Projected record of 20-11 overall, 12-8 in the Big Ten. KenPom has us ranked 63rd with a projection of 16-15 and 8-12 in the Big Ten. The main part of the discrepancy is Bart Torvik does not projects freshman stats, and KenPom doesn't. So I think you're going to see KenPom's rankings drastically shift, as they always do in the first few weeks of the season. But thought that was an interesting little anecdote here.
Another thing from KenPom that I wanted to point out. So this is the first time since 2001 that Rutgers will not be playing, doesn't have a sub 300 team on KenPom on its schedule. The lowest ranked team in the preseason rankings is Wagner at 269th. That's the opening game. St. Peter's is 226, Monmouth 202, Merrimack 227, Kennesaw State 223, and then Columbia 209. And then for the high major non-conference teams, they have Notre Dame at 69, Alabama at 4, Houston at 1, which is not surprising because they're always a pretty high KenPom favorite. Seton Hall at 91, which is a bit surprising. KenPom's lower on Seton Hall, I guess, without some of their returning pieces. And then Princeton at 77 for the non-conference slate, which I found pretty funny. Now, when it comes to these KenPom rankings, I'm not sure if that, looking back through the years, if that's their ranking when they played or if that was the final ranking. So it's tough to say. Technically, in 2005 or 2004, they did not play a sub 300 team, but they also played a D2 team, Arkansas Monticello, so I didn't count that. But yeah, first time since 2001, Rutgers doesn't have a sub 300 ranked team on KenPom on its schedule. So I still don't get the whole uproar that happened when it first came out, but this is just another proving point that it's not as bad as people made it out to be.
Yeah, I just think people who didn't really understand the methodology behind it freaked out, and it is what it is. That's going to be fans regardless. But so that's exciting. Again, if you don't have tickets already and have nothing going on Thursday, I can't recommend it enough to go to the scrimmage, because while a lot of us went to the scrimmage earlier in the offseason, the weekend of the Washington game, this is going to be an actual game environment. There's going to be referees. There's going to be a scorekeeper. There's going to be probably almost a full house. I know the 100 level is sold out, like we've said for weeks now. But the second and third levels are going to be first come, first serve seating. So you get a pretty good seat still for $10. So
yep. And they had that super secret, not secret scrimmage
against Towson.
Yes. So
how did you hear that went, Rich?
I don't have stats, but I heard it went well. I know Troy Donovan posted that they won by 12, and he said the freshman superstar duo scored 50 total. So
wow,
the Burger Brothers, as he puts it.
Burger Brothers, yes, McDonald's burger, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like that's a good Towson team too. I think they're preseason favorites in their conference in CAA. I think it is.
They're definitely up there. I think.
Yeah, if not favorites, they're definitely in the top 3 of their conference preseason. So a 12-point win sounds solid. I wouldn't overthink it, just because people see names and they're like, kind of like what you said before. They see the name on the schedule for Rutgers' schedule, and it's like, oh, it's a shitty schedule. And it's like, no, they're actually like, this school's decent. This one's actually pretty good. This one's good. And you see the name Towson, and you're thinking automatically like, oh, that's what the hell? We only beat them by 12. You don't know how the game went. It could have been a 20-point game, and all of a sudden, at the last minute, they just started giving up points. Who cares? Like 12-point win, solid. 50 points from the Burger Brothers is huge. So, I don't know if we keep that nickname. Do we keep that one going forward?
I hate that nickname. I don't want to keep that.
Kind of lame. And also, who goes to McDonald's and gets a burger anymore?
Who goes to McDonald's period anymore?
That's fair, but like you're getting chicken nuggets. You're getting a McChicken, and it's not even called a burger. It's called a Big Mac. Like,
they have regular burgers, but yeah, I get what you're saying.
But it's just, I don't know.
See, next time I go to Wendy's, I'm getting the Krabby Patty, whatever the heck they're doing with that.
Oh my god, yeah, I heard about that.
And I'm rewatching the Krusty Krab informative employee video.
I wanted to mention once again, we are running a giveaway that will run up until the start of the season on November 6th. Richie has both of the prizes now, I believe.
Yes, somewhere.
As he gets those out, there's 2 ways you can be a part of this giveaway. You can write a review on Apple Podcasts mentioning Rutgers Madness. You'll get 2 entries for that. Or you can leave a comment on this video mentioning Rutgers Madness, and we will enter you as well. There's going to be 2 winners. One's going to win the Dylan Harper High School jersey. The other is going to win the Ace Bailey High School jersey. We're excited about this. I think whoever ends up winning is going to be as well. But just another way you can support the show and another way we can give back to you guys. That is all I have on the sheet here. Do either of you guys have anything that we haven't touched on? I know that there was a bunch of Rutgers sports that tomorrow I think the Rutgers Wrestling Media Day is happening. Super 32 is this weekend. The women's soccer team had their their streak of non-losses broken this weekend. Yeah, the undefeated streak. Yes, that's the word I was looking for. Broken this weekend. Is there anything that you guys wanted to touch on any of those things or anything else before we head out?
Wrestling Media Day tomorrow. I don't know what's going to be said, but I'm sure a lot of questions from the fans, especially after losing Donnie, losing Seabass, replacing him with Mikey Labriola, who's never coached before. So intrigued to see what he has to say. That's really all I got.
And then Rutgers Women's Basketball Media Day is next Tuesday, so a week from tomorrow. Similar things, a lot of talent brought in, lost some talent, so should be an interesting day.
All right, well, we thank you guys for sticking through with us here. I know it hasn't been an easy last couple weeks as a Rutgers fan. Things are looking up. We got a better opportunity for a win than I think we've had in a long time for the football team this weekend. Obviously, basketball season right around the corner. So there are things
6.5 points.
6.5 points. Yep. There are better days ahead, but just don't give up. You can be frustrated. I'm frustrated. You can be sad. I'm sad, but don't give up on the team. But for me and Rich and Alec, this has been another edition of the Knight Report podcast. Signing off.